Welcome to the Downtown, brought to you by Arlington Citizen Media. I am Daryl Smith Jr., and to my right is...
I am Rody John, and across the table from me is...
Amy, live and in person together.
On today's show, we sit down with Andy Pryor and talk about his time on the Term Limits Committee, his job as a financial planner, and being a candidate for Vice President of the United States.
We also talked to Nikkie Hunter about term limits, her own Arlington podcast, and the new Arlington Unity Council.
And finally, we talked to Jessica Sheddy Black about what she's been up to during COVID, how she thinks the short-term rental ordinance is going, and her time on the Term Limits Committee.
So, this is the first time that we've all been to... We did a big recording, a big day of recording today.
Big day.
First time all of us have been together since...
March, I believe, yeah.
March, we were probably the last time we all three did a giant recording session was in March, probably like 2 weeks, maybe a week before COVID really hit here.
Yeah, before the lockdowns really happened. And
you know, we're not in the library right now, obviously, because it's closed. The one downtown is.
You can still get books to go, though, so make sure you
can.
still visit your local library.
Yes, and I have, and I will. But I guess, what have y'all been up to other than that?
Well, just today, we all went to our favorite pizza place, Old School.
True story.
Had some pizza and suds. That was really great. I had Lotus Cafe.
Nice. That's right.
Yeah, last night we had some pho, and it was very good. They serve you your food out of like a flap. The owner made like a flap in the door,
nice,
out of like cardboard and paper. And so, you know, you order, you call it in, and then he just shoves your food through that hole, and then shuts the flap and runs away. So,
runs?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of funny.
When I thought of takeout as a child, that's how I envisioned it.
Yeah.
Envisioned it.
Actually, in Italy, I've been seeing that they've been... So they used to, back in the Spanish flu, and I believe there were some other things that prevented people from actually being face-to-face, but they actually had tiny little windows that they would stick, they would sell their drinks through, and they're starting to do that again now due to COVID. So, I mean...
How crazy. Maybe we should look more to the Spanish flu for, like, ways to resume some sense of normalcy until there's a vaccine of some sort.
Right.
Sure. I mean, this is something that's been much discussed as the parallel to the Spanish flu, which was, of course, much more deadly,
right?
But also came and then went, just disappeared within 2 years. Maybe we'll get lucky like that.
But, I mean, obviously technology has gone leaps and bounds since then, so I feel like it would hopefully be much faster for us. So maybe within just a year time.
So, Amy, you today went to an Arlington event while we were recording.
I did. I had to skip out for a little bit, and I went to the AISD backpack giveaway that they do every year, back to school at the AT&T Stadium. All you have to do is be an Arlington resident, and honestly, they don't even check that.
But you did have to register. So
right, you have to register, you know, put your child's name and their age in there, and you just go. It was pretty well organized considering they gave away 10,000 backpacks today full of school supplies. I went and picked one up. You know, COVID has kind of wrecked my family a little bit, you know, so I was glad to have the opportunity to take advantage of that service that Arlington offers. There was a lot of cars. They had it pretty well organized by last name and times. So I was in and out of there within about 35 minutes, which is pretty good.
Considering that was, you know, that many people that they're going to be, you know, helping today. Or did help. I guess it's already over. But
yeah, it was great. I recommend it if your family needs it, you know, please take advantage of that service. The city's proud of it, and they're happy to give it away.
Right. Yeah, we happened to talk to the mayor after the fact, and he was glowing about it. So we'll look for that in the future episodes of the Downtown.
This was, overall, I would say this was one of the better recording sessions we had. We had a lot of varied guests, a lot of cool stuff coming up. I'm really excited for people to hear it.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, we got hot sauces coming. We've got... planner talk?
We do. Artist talk.
Arts Council talk.
Look forward to, big recording day we had today, and this should be good for another 3 weeks. And we're just going to take the next 3 weeks off. We're not going to do anything. I'm just kidding.
We do. I'm going to work the next day, and then we'll just take 3 weeks off.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, we are here with now 4-time guest
4-time?
Andy
we were
Pryor.
5.
I think it's 4.
I believe it's 4.
It's 4.
All right, he's closing in on that jacket, folks.
Yeah.
Man, now we got to call a seamstress.
Yes, we're gonna have to find the jacket. We're gonna have to find all the stuff we're gonna put on it because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be you. Like I don't know.
I got to find a
who
bedazzler
else,
machine.
I think I have one at home.
Oh, okay.
You have a
not
bedazzler
personally.
machine?
I have two daughters, so of course I have.
Yes.
Of course I have.
You have to have a bedazzler machine with 2 daughters.
So much glitter.
I have buckets, like buckets of glitter, buckets of glitter and buckets of Mod Podge.
There we go.
So the last time that we saw you was before COVID,
Right.
And all that. What have you been up to during COVID? I'm sure a lot of what we've been up to, but
The world has changed.
I agree. It really has.
And not to make light of it, I think everybody's situations have changed. The thing I keep telling people, how I can describe my life changing is before the pandemic started. For work, I would drive almost 2,000 miles a month, just in the DFW area, maybe with the once a month trip to Tyler for, sales meetings or whatever. And in the months of April, May, and June, and probably even July, I drove no more than about 300 miles a month. So a 90% reduction in my time on the road trying to go from point A to point B to just do business.
Right.
And yet, I don't think other things have changed at all. Social media is
As prominent as ever.
Yeah.
maybe
Maybe
worse.
even more.
Definitely worse.
People are I think, taking out their frustrations on each other on social media even more than ever before. And so, it's I mean, everybody's going through something, and I think that requires us to be a little bit more patient and understanding and accepting that this person who is attacking us on social media may be dealing with a personal challenge. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they've got a close family friend who's going through COVID-19, something, anything.
Hurt people. So yeah.
Exactly. Maybe they're just lacking in the normal amount of social interaction that they need to survive mentally and spiritually and emotionally. And so it's, I've had conversations with people about, suicidal thoughts. I've had conversations with people about job loss, about family, deaths, everything. And it's a challenge out there.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So the one thing I'm most grateful for, and this is going to sound a little callous, but I used to be an athletic director and a track coach and was very involved in the education world for most of my adult life. I'm glad I'm not in that world right now. Just
tough.
Very glad tough. I'm not dealing with those decisions from a liability standpoint as a athletic director or a coach, trying to make decisions on what we're going to do, how we're going to proceed forward, and then on the flip side, handling the variety of opinions that are coming from the parents, and from why are you doing this? You're trying to kill my kid, all the way to why are you not doing this? My kid's going to get this college scholarship if you don't mess it up. And that whole range. And I feel sorry for and empathetic for all my former coaching and athletic director friends and stuff. And I'm watching them on social media and trying to be as supportive as possible of them because it's a challenging time.
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
it really is. So I see you post a lot about Woodman Life. What is that?
So that's the company I work for. It's a member-owned, not-for-profit 501c8 financial company. So we do life insurance, retirement planning, everything. We're member-owned, so that means we get a chance to have a say in how our company is run.
Which is cool.
Yeah,
very nice.
Very different business model.
Right.
Been around since 1890.
Wow.
So we're not new. Been through all kinds of things.
The Spanish flu.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Several
It's not your
world
first.
wars.
It's not your first pandemic.
Not our first pandemic. Not several world wars, Great Depression, '08 financial crash, .com bubble. All kinds of things. And honestly, I'm very grateful to have the job I've got. It allows me to work with people one-on-one, figure out what their needs are, and then come up with solutions.
Right.
Yeah, it's the insurance business, which means I also have to deal with, deaths and families and how to navigate that from a financial perspective. So I have those conversations. But at the same time, I have the conversations with parents who are like, how can I set my children up for success? How can I do this and take care of things? So, yeah, I love it.
Very nice. So you're on the Term Limits Advisory Committee. What can you tell us about the committee?
So the committee technically has already ended.
I was about to say it's over.
Okay.
now.
Yeah. So let's talk with records.
Right.
I believe it's the fastest lived, shortest lived, most meetings in the shortest amount of
There were a
time
lot of them.
committee in the history of the city of Arlington.
Right.
If I'm wrong on that, I would love somebody to show me the historical information.
Right.
Who set the appointments for the meetings? Did the council, the city council?
City council, yes.
Okay, so they were like, you need these. You're going to have this many meetings on these days,
Well,
and you had to show up.
So the
on
specific dates of the meetings were technically set by city staff, with an understanding of what city council was looking for. The members of the committee were selected by city council mayor based upon officially based upon the people who submitted applications. Starting back in November of 2018, right after the election that implemented term limits in Arlington and the announcement that there would be a committee. What I learned in the build-up to the launch of the committee was that there were a number of people who might have been called and invited and asked to submit an application. And that probably formed a significant chunk of the committee. I couldn't give you an exact number, but if I had to guess, it was close to half the committee were essentially invited at the last minute.
What I read about it kind of felt that way.
And to be perfectly open and honest, that includes me.
Yeah, I was about to say you were kind of a late addition to.
I actually fall in both camps.
Okay.
Because I filled out an application in November of 2018, and I have the confirmation email that came back from city staff thanking me for that application in 2018. And then I get a phone call literally the day before city council is going to vote on the members of the committee and appoint them, asking me if I want to be on the committee. And I'm like, yeah, and I've already put in an application. And they're like, well, they want you to put in a new application. So I literally just rewrote everything, copied, pasted everything on the application, and the only thing that changed was the date that I signed it. Literally. No, actually, one other thing changed. My business address had changed. So, yeah. But nothing else changed. My name didn't change. My phone number didn't change. My home address, all that stuff was the same. And I resubmitted it 30 minutes after I was asked. And the next day, they voted on me along with 22 of the other committee members. And then there was the one special vote to deny a committee member.
Yep.
Followed by another vote a week later to finally replace that committee member with an official committee member making the full 24. So,
have you ever seen anything like that?
No.
It was,
No, in
it was
fact,
kind of a circus.
In fact, I think the other record was the speed record with the number of meetings that we had in the short amount of time. 4 meetings in 15 days, 13 plus hours worth of committee hearings in those 15 days and 4 meetings. I'm sure that city council has at one point in time or another had a couple of special meetings in a short time frame and thus had 3 or 4 meetings within a couple of weeks. But that's got to be the exception. I can't imagine it's happened more than once or twice in the history of the city. And I've nobody can come up with an example for me of a appointed committee that has ever experienced that short of a time frame, from launch to supposed completion. And my personal feeling is that, and it was included in the group statement that I read out to City Council and posted on social media. We missed an opportunity. We missed an opportunity to have a true discussion about what it is that city government in Arlington should look like moving forward. And the charge from the city council was so overly narrow that cut off one leg from underneath us, and the other leg that got cut off from underneath us was just the speed they wanted to have it all done.
Yeah, I think you're right. It felt like it could have been like a substantive conversation to have, and it's hard to do that if there are 4 meetings in 15 days and then it's over.
Right.
Well, I also think that it's hard to have a substantive discussion when, let's be honest, the issue of term limits in a vacuum without the discussion of any other reforms to city government is pointless and a waste of time. Let's just be honest.
Right.
I mean, term limits in and of themselves are not the solution to anyone's problems, especially here in Arlington. We needed a discussion about how term limits interact with other reforms, such as recall, referendum, initiative, and I could probably go on. There's a number of other things that I think in interaction with term limits would make term limits better and also make our city government better and more responsive. But when you just talk about one little thing in a vacuum and ignore every other issue, I don't think we can come up with a better version of term limits because we've just ignored everything else.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on term limits as they stand now, and I guess as the committee kind of talked about what they could be?
So again, in the interest of openness, back in August of 2018, I stood up in front of City Council and said, I don't support term limits, generally speaking, at all. I think people need to vote in elections, and the problem that I expressed at that particular time was here in Arlington, our city government was obviously being unresponsive to the people.
Yeah.
And the actions of our city government had convinced me that in Arlington, we needed term limits.
That's fair.
Of some kind. And while I felt like the term limits that we were going to vote on were maybe a little bit harsh,
that was my read on it too.
Once they were voted into place, we have to give them the time to work.
Yeah, to do what they're supposed to do.
Exactly. And we haven't even completed one full cycle of elections since then. So in my opinion, until we've had, honestly, I would prefer to see 6 to 10 years worth of term limits in place to see how the data changes. And that was one of the things that I did on the city, on the term limits committee, was I went and looked at the last 20 years of election data for the city of Arlington and analyzed, well, how long have each of these city council members actually served?
I read it. It was very
illuminating. Thank you. How many times did they go uncontested in an election with no opposition? How many times, and just how does that all work together, and what was the actual data? And I thought that data should guide some of what the city, the term limits committee was discussing. I don't care what term limits are in other cities around Texas. I really don't.
Right.
I think that's immaterial.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether they're the same size city as we are, larger city, smaller city.
They're not Arlington.
Thank you. That's their solution, and maybe it works for them. Maybe it doesn't.
Right.
But just copy-pasting what they're doing
is lazy, really.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's lazy But in honesty, it's not going to provide a solution that meets Arlington's needs.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
It can't. Because, again, that goes back to my other point, that it's excluding the overall picture of what else Arlington really needs to look at. One of the things I wanted to ask city staff to research for us was how many of those other cities that have term limits around the state of Texas also had a recall option or initiative and referendum or some other reforms that I think need to be discussed here in Arlington. And obviously that was outside the charge of the committee. Nobody wanted to research it. Nobody wanted to discuss it. So it didn't come up. And so to answer your question, I think that right now maintaining the term limits we have is reasonable.
Yeah. I said the same thing. I was like, I didn't vote for these because I thought they were kind of a little too harsh. But everyone else did, and that not by just a small amount. It was quite a large amount, especially when you consider how many people vote in Arlington, which is another problem in and of itself, I think. But
absolutely,
I also was like, well, and if it did come back up on any sort of ballot, I was going to vote no because we need to let it happen. We need to let them do their thing.
I think for all the accusations leveled at Zach Maxwell and the pro-term limits effort about how he attacks people, it's all personal to him, he hates people, blah, blah, blah. I think that those accusations are coming from a place of projection by the anti-term limits side of Arlington's establishment, who are basically projecting their own personal attacks and really honestly showing their true colors. And so this is not a one-way street. The city of Arlington has not suffered solely at the hands of one man named Zach Maxwell,
right?
Where all of our problems can be traced back to him. That's factually inaccurate.
I'm sure he'd like to think that he was that powerful.
There are a number of people in Arlington who would like to think they're that powerful, and so it's ridiculous to make those kinds of statements, and it's ridiculous to say, well, there was no committee, this was all created in a vacuum, nobody had any input, and he just kind of magically put it on the ballot himself. I'm like, really?
It was a very big team
really?
effort.
Yeah.
I mean, the team effort started, or the discussion, the committee, so to speak, started before he even publicly announced anything.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that so one of the little discussions during the committee was whether or not Zach Maxwell should do a presentation to the committee.
Yeah, it was kind of a struggle, right?
Right. And while I didn't really have a problem with him making a presentation, I felt like that might be appropriate. What I found kind of absurd was the idea that there would need to be a rebuttal presentation. I'm like, what are you going to rebut? That there were 12,000 signatures, 11,000 signatures, and it got put on the ballot, and what are you going to say? We didn't like it.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's Zach.
It's Zach, he doesn't know what he's talking about, whatever. I'm like, so the rebuttal idea I thought was more absurd than whether or not Zach should be allowed to say something. What I was going to be curious about was if Zach had made a presentation, was how far back in the history was he really going to go? Because in the summer of 2017, fully almost a year and a half before the election, there were several people who sat down over lunch and discussed the idea of reforms to the city of Arlington and whether or not they should include term limits and how strict those term limits should be. I was at that meeting with Zach Maxwell and several other people, and we disagreed. In fact, we told him we couldn't support his version. We didn't like it. We thought it was too harsh. And we wanted to know if he would support additional reforms. And he rejected that. And we said, okay, well, we're going to part let you do what you want to do. We're going to do what we want to do. We made it a half-hearted attempt to go ahead and start our own petition. And honestly, life got in the way.
Sure, as it does. Yep.
And we didn't really proceed. And the next thing we know, Zach Maxwell's making his announcement, and some of our friends and partners with Citizens for a Better Arlington went ahead and worked with Zach. And so even within our own little group...
It's like not a monolith. Yeah.
It's not a monolith. And some people felt like it was good to go right away. And some of them, like myself, waited until the city of Arlington gave me a reason to say, okay, now I'm going to support this.
Yeah.
You know? And so it was a true reflection, I think, of what Arlington is like, with people with differing views having a civil adult conversation about how we want to move things forward in the city, and then different people trying different things. And when one of them was successful, eventually most of us got on board with it. And so that discussion, that presentation didn't happen. And that's fine. But I think that the way that the term limits committee was structured and the way that they wanted us to have so many meetings in such short time kind of fed into the conspiracy theory
I can see
view that city council is going to ram this down our throats. And it's going to be on the November 2020 election, which is going to be illegal, and they're just going to waste Arlington's money on another lawsuit and blah. And I'm like, look.
I heard all those.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, all of that opinion, all of that conspiracy theory could have been completely avoided if they had given us the normal time frame for a normal Arlington committee of 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Right.
It wouldn't have fed, like you said, it wouldn't have fed into that conspiracy sort of, it's all this, a big thing. If they had let the process work the way the process normally works in other cases.
Right.
Well, they've been so hostile to it from the beginning, and as you said, now people like yourself and Daryl are, you know what? Yeah, term limits. Get out of here, all of you.
And it wasn't. I wasn't that involved in city government prior to that, to be honest with you. Like it wasn't something that really piqued my curiosity. And now, I don't know if it's because I've gotten older or because of stuff like that, I'm definitely more keyed in to what's happening in the city that I live in, because number one, it's important, and number two, it does affect my day-to-day life in a lot more ways than anything that goes on federally or like state, because I live here. This is what my taxes, I pay my property taxes here, like.
All politics is local.
Yeah,
I think somebody famous said that sometime.
All right, so speaking of politics, we have heard a little rumor that you are going to be on the ballot for vice president as a write-in candidate. So not on the ballot, we would write it on the ballot.
Correct. A little clarification there.
Right,
Yes.
Right. But you do have to be like an official candidate to be on the write-in ballot in Texas, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So people forget. They honestly, I run into this daily on social media. People think that the presidential election is one monolithic election that's national. It's not.
It's like state-run.
It's 50 different state elections, each with their own rules and guidelines, plus another set of rules and guidelines for the territories, District of Columbia. Every part of what we consider to be the United States of America has its own set of rules and regulations as to how to proceed with the presidential election. Right. So here in Texas, there are 4 ways you can be an official candidate. The first way is through the 2 major parties which have primary elections. So Republican or Democrat primaries, winner goes on to the November ballot.
Right.
Second way is through the minor parties that are convention run and don't have a primary, so Libertarians and Greens. Have ballot access officially, can put their candidates' names on the ballot, but don't have access to the primary process. Right. Okay.
I've been through a Green convention. It was me and like 4 people at a coffee house.
And let's be honest, in the state of Texas, that is exactly how every other party besides the Republicans and the Democrats are run. The third way is the independent candidate way. And the most famous example of that here in the state of Texas would be Ross Perot.
Right.
Okay. It also has happened over the years with people like Kinky Friedman running for governor and things like that. What I've learned over the years is that in the research I've done there, similar to the research I did on term limits here locally, is that if you don't spend upwards of $500,000 to $600,000 to $1 million or more, if you don't get at least 150,000 signatures on your petition, you are not going to be on the ballot as an independent candidate in the state of Texas. Regardless of population growth or not, regardless of any other factors, that kind of money and those number of signatures have to be gathered to overcome the artificial barriers put in place by the Secretary of State's office down in Austin, where they literally throw out a percentage of your signatures based upon a projection.
It's not even real, but a projection.
They take a sample of the signatures that you submit, and they analyze those pages of signatures to figure out how many were valid and how many were just people who were not actually registered voters or whatever, and thus invalid. And they assume that percentage applies to the entire stack of signatures you submitted.
Right.
And so while the official requirements in some elections have been as low as 45,000 signatures for a statewide office like that, I have yet to find a single example that didn't require 150,000 signatures to get on the ballot that way.
Based on them being like, no, this one page is messed up, or this X here is messed up, and then it applies to everything.
And in 2018, there was a gentleman whose name I totally forget, and don't hold it against me, I wasn't going to support him anyways, who tried to get on the ballot as an independent for U.S. Senate against Ted Cruz and Beto.
Yeah, I remember. I can't remember his name either, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
He spent $300,000 and did not get official independent candidate status because he didn't get enough signatures. Now, granted, there's an argument made there that he was taken advantage of by some people who were like, "Oh, sure, we'll get you signatures," and then didn't do their job. But the fact of the matter is, the last time a successful political party did get ballot access in the state of Texas, it came out in court later that it cost $500,000. And that was when the Republican Party operatives spent $500,000 to get signatures and then gave them to the Green Party for a Green Party ballot access.
Like in the 2000s?
Yeah, early 2000s. And then the fourth and final way is to, and it only applies for the presidential slot on the ballot, is to file as a write-in candidate with the only requirement being that you have signatures from 38 electors, so that if that particular write-in presidential candidate managed to magically win the state of Texas with more write-in votes than Trump or Biden gets in November,
they would then have their electors.
They would already have their electors on file with Secretary of State's office, and we would be able to proceed. So I have supported, this will be the fourth presidential election cycle in a row, a write-in candidate because I'm so frustrated with the larger parties and just the overall political situation nationally in America. And in the last two cycles, I personally gathered all of those elector signatures from around the state of Texas and then personally drove to Austin to get them filed. And this time around, my good friend and political mentor, Tom Hofling, asked me if I would be willing to be his running mate. And like a fool that I am, I said yes. And so, yeah, the deadlines, ironically, in Texas are the same for getting a ballot proposition on the ballot locally, like term limits. If they had tried to get it on the ballot for the November election, the deadline was August 17th. The same deadline applies to us submitting the presidential electors list in Austin. So, yeah, I'll be taking care of that again. So
very nice.
Yeah.
So, have you gotten any other press besides us asking about this?
No, not yet.
Okay. Breaking news.
Yeah, exactly.
Beep, 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 beep.
Yes. And from experience, I will tell you that typically local press like this or international press who is just trying to understand the craziness of American electoral politics are usually the only sources of press regarding independent candidates who are going to mostly be write-ins and things like that. It's pretty rare for there to be much press for even the Greens and the Libertarians.
When I ran in 2016 on the Green ticket, I had two or three interviews, and several of them were international. Yeah. I had, I think, one from France. And then the day after the election, I had several people reach out, like the Star Telegram reached out to me, Shorthorn reached out to me. But at that point, I was like, well, the election's over. Like,
right.
I don't really want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, you want to talk about how I got my butt kicked?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
But yes, there is not. I think that's very, very, very true.
I think the majority of any press we might get is going to be, maybe some local radio shows around the country, bloggers, vloggers, things like that, and
vloggers.
And
even the logging community.
There you go. Yes. Yeah.
They love Andy Pryor.
Flannel. It's my color.
Exactly. Flannel in the beard is what it is.
There you go.
Okay. Well, that's about all we have for you, unless there's anything else you want to talk about.
Man, you know me. I could talk.
Well, that's why you'll be on again, and you'll get that jacket.
Right.
Yeah, we might have you and Garrett on at the same time, so that we would just get all the fives out of the way.
Yeah.
There we go.
Our friend Garrett.
Awesome.
Also has been on. He's only been on 3 times though.
So I thought he was on.
Who's the other 4? There's another 4.
I think Garrett is. If we get Garrett on, he'll be.
Okay.
He's 4 first. We'll get Garrett next time, and then we can have them both on at the same time.
There we go.
Give them two jackets out.
Yes.
I still want to know where we're getting these jackets.
It's going to be a thrift store.
Yeah,
okay.
Spoiler alert. It's
going to be a thrift store and the stencils and spray paint.
Right. Yes.
We're going to have to air them out outside. Very potent.
Yeah, you can't wear them indoors.
We're going to make them the day of.
Yeah, not near flame either.
Yeah, not near any flames.
Oh man, no, this has been a pleasure. I really enjoy it.
Good.
I appreciate what y'all are doing to promote local things here in Arlington.
Trying.
And then give people this platform to discuss other interests too.
Yeah.
So thank you all for having me on here. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, we always enjoy you. Thanks for coming.
Jessica Sheddy Black. How are you today, ma'am?
Good. How are y'all?
Doing great.
Doing well.
We're good. We're talking to you via Zoom.
Yes.
Due to COVID. Yes. And it's good to see you, kind of.
Good to see y'all again, too.
Yeah. So the last time we saw you, we were interviewing you about the short-term rentals ban in Arlington. Were you satisfied with
not
the
a ban.
Yeah, that's true. The short-term ordinance.
Okay.
Short-term ordinance.
Yes. Were you satisfied with the results issued by the city?
So far, I have been happy. We had 3 in my neighborhood, and they have had to cease operations, so my kids can ride bikes and walk the dog and do all that stuff again. So, yeah.
Very nice.
I don't understand this question. Hold on. Okay. So there are plans. I think they're actually already existing. Several spaces within the 101 center apartment buildings that are designated as short-term rentals, like several units that are going to be exclusively short-term.
Yeah, I saw the Star Telegram article a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. What are your feelings on that?
Mine are probably mixed. I mean, obviously that's not a residential zone. But I know some other cities in Texas have their ordinances where if there's a multi-family building, they kind of cap the percentage of units that can be converted to short-term rental. And my concerns there are tied to like affordable housing because, not everybody lives in a single-family residential house. Mm-hmm. And if there's an unlimited number of, multi-family units that can get tied up into basically tourist accommodations, that can impact rents for locals.
Is there anything in the ordinance that talks about a percentage as it stands today? Like a percentage of that building that could or could not be
No, not in ours right now.
Okay. I didn't know. I've read it, but it's been a while since I've talked about it.
Yeah. And by the time I got involved in all that, the option 1 and option 2 had kind of already been formed. So it wasn't really at the point where there was a lot of input to give on the options. It was just, which one do you want to get behind?
Right.
Okay. So, beyond that, you were also part of the term limits committee. How was that, and how would somebody join a committee like that?
I applied for the committee back in October of 2018 when the application first came out. So before the election results were finalized. I had actually signed the term limits petition, and I voted for term limits. The reason that I applied to be on that committee was because I really wanted to make sure any future conversations that the city had about term limits were about what kind of term limits we should have versus whether or not we should have them. Because I voted for Proposition E, but it was because the district I live in, we've been in our current home in our current district for 6 years. And while I appreciate the service of my council member and I appreciate her experience, in those 6 years, we've never had the option to vote for anybody else because no one's run against her. Right. So my concern, and the reason I felt like we needed some type of term limits, was to kind of prevent those outlier situations where you have council members that stay on for decades and become so entrenched that nobody runs against them. Because in any form of representative government, having competitive elections is really important. Right. And if we're not getting that, then that was my concern. I didn't necessarily think Prop E was perfect, but at that point in time in 2018, you basically had a choice between no term limits or Prop E, and I knew that the charter could be amended every 2 years. So I saw Prop E as a starting point.
I think I was with you, and I've said this on a couple of other interviews we've had. I thought that the term limits were a little harsh, in my opinion, as Prop E laid them out. So I actually voted no originally. However, everything that's happened since then, especially the fact that it was a very large vote, like 62% of the people that voted for it, which is, in my opinion, that's a mandate at that point. Like there should be term limits. I've actually kind of come around on it because I was worried, initially, like, oh, they're too harsh, that's going to be bad for council or for people, the potential council members. But seeing kind of how the city has reacted the way that they have, I've actually come around to being like, no, the will of the voters needs to be applied here. That being said, I also think it's important to not be like, well, government is not static. It's not the same. Like we like you said, you can't amend the charter every 2 years. So I think having an ongoing conversation about this, especially with voters and citizens of the city, is a good thing. And I'm glad that the term limits committee was, having some of those conversations, albeit in such a quick manner, it seems. It was a very quick committee. So I appreciate that you signed up to help give that input and continue that conversation.
Well, so one thing, because I hear a lot of people saying, 62 of the percent of the voters wanted this. But I don't know if that's necessarily what that vote told us. Because like I said, I voted for it, but I'm not married to Prop B. Right. I saw it as a starting point. So I thought the opportunity that the committee presented for public input was really important because Prop E was drafted by one person.
Right.
I don't know whether or not he had input from other people in the drafting process, but if he did, it certainly wasn't public and it certainly wasn't transparent. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important that we have that conversation about, okay, yes, we want term limits, but what do we want them to look like? And it's not really overturning the will of the voters because nothing changes unless it goes on a ballot and the voters vote to change it. So the only people that can change anything are the voters.
Right. So besides being on this term limits committee, what else have you been doing with your COVID time?
Well, we've, had the 2 kids at home. So we've been dealing with that. We've had some challenges. My husband got furloughed. He finally got called back to work this week for the first time. So that's good.
That's a plus.
Just kind of looking after, we had a sick family member who unfortunately passed away due to cancer, not COVID, but
sorry to hear that.
But because of that, we've been staying close to home because we didn't want to risk getting him sick.
Right.
And then obviously continuing to work on short-term rental issues, because I have no doubt that next year when the legislature is back in session, they will be back trying to preempt the cities.
Right. They have a habit of doing that.
They do.
Have you been like doing any takeout or anything like that during COVID? Like supporting those businesses that way?
Well, as much as we can. Obviously,
Sure.
being furloughed, we're not rolling in funds, so we eat home most of the time. But occasionally, we'll splurge on a treat.
What has been your favorite splurge during COVID? Like what business or what restaurant would you recommend to people?
Well, my favorite is different than my kids, so I don't always get to vote. I love Suko Thai, but my kids not so much. So they usually vote for pizza of some sort.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I'm sure last time we asked you what your favorite pizza place was. Is it the same still? I don't remember what you said last time.
Mama's.
Yeah, we've had Mama's since then. I don't think we had it at that point.
No.
And we had it, and we were, super, super delicious.
Yes.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it.
And the service was really really too.
Mhm.
Because it was in the before time, so
Right.
we actually went to the restaurant.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on. It was great to see
Oh, you're
you.
absolutely welcome.
Yeah, thank you for taking your time to talk with us. And I'm sure we'll have you back on soon, especially as these city issues progress.
Mhm.
I'm sure you'll be involved, and we always want to get your opinion.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend.
You
Thank
too.
you.
You too. Thank you.
We are here with Nikkie Hunter. How are you today, ma'am?
Hello. I am great. Glad to be here. How are you guys?
We're doing well.
Doing great.
It's been a really good group of interviews so far. It's a nice day so far until it gets to 950 degrees.
Right?
So, how long have you lived in Arlington, and what did you find unique about the city?
Oh, wow. I've been here. I wasn't born here, but I basically started first grade here. So I was born over in Grand Prairie, next city over.
Mhm.
Moved here in first grade, went to Johns Elementary.
Nice.
And what I find most interesting about Arlington is just it has that small town feel a little bit. So I love it here.
No, we feel the same way. I mean, like they say, it's the biggest small town in the Metroplex. So,
Absolutely.
So you are a fellow Arlington podcaster, as you're the host of Positively Nikki. How's your podcast?
Yes. It's going good. I'm loving it. Normally I was a very shy person, so it's brought me out of my shell, and I'm loving every minute of it.
yeah, I think we've had a couple of the same guests.
Yeah, but that's fine.
Yeah,
Right.
probably.
Because I look, I'm like, oh, what did she ask them that we didn't ask them?
Right. I
before?
think it gives a different spin on like
Mhm.
what we're asking and what you're asking, but also showing a more complete picture of the people that we're both
Right.
talking to.
Right.
Yeah, it also shows the depth that is Arlington, because obviously there are now 2 podcasts about Arlington. So,
Arlington, right?
yeah.
What made you decide to start a podcast?
Honestly, it's something I've always wanted to do. I have a background in journalism, so I've always kind of wanted to do it, but unfortunately, not really unfortunately, I took a different path in marketing.
Mm.
COVID-19 hit it, honestly. When COVID-19 hit and I had some extra time on my hand, I'm like, hey, let's make a podcast, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind of how it started.
Yeah, I loved how most people learned to, or just did a new skill while the whole pandemic was happening. They're like, well, I'm going to be inside, so I'm going to start learning how to do this.
Do something, yeah.
So you were also part of the term limit advisory committee. How did you feel that the committee worked out?
I think it was a great committee. It was a great group of individuals. I think we definitely made some tough decisions, but I think it worked out well in the time that we were there. We were able to kind of hash everything out, get some opinions from not only the committee, but get some opinions from the community as well.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of talking to the community members, was there a lot of community engagement in those meetings?
We had quite a few people. The first night we didn't have that many people call in, but as we kind of went towards the meetings, yeah, we had quite a bit of people that really called in and gave their input.
And what drew you to wanting to be on the committee? Was it just like a this is my city, I want to be more involved in it, or did you have other aspects? Like some people wanted to be on it because they're really about government not overreach, but government oversight.
Right.
What drew you to it?
For me, it was just wanting to serve my city. I wanted to get out and help serve the city, as in any other thing that I do for the city. It was just another level. When I got I filled out the paperwork and got the call from the council person that did call me, and I accepted it because it was something I felt I could do for my city. It's my way to give back. And
how do you feel about term limits overall, both maybe like in general and also what we have currently for term limits in the city of Arlington?
Well, originally, I've made it pretty public. I was not for term limits, but the people spoke and the people voted for term limits, and I do respect that. I respect their votes. I respect all their hard work that they put in that. But what I voted for was just to give the people a little bit more of an option. And that's technically all it was. We never intended to take away term limits. We can't do that. That's not for us to do. The people of Arlington have spoken. They want term limits. That's what we respected. We just gave options. And that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was too. When the term limit vote started, and as I've alluded to in other interviews, I was not for it. I thought they were pretty tough. I thought they were a little too stringent. However, once the vote had been cast and it was such a significant vote, 62% is a lot of people in the city of Arlington who voted for it. I was,
right.
This is something you have to respect that. You can't overturn it just because you didn't like the outcome of an election or whatnot.
Absolutely.
And I also see the giving people additional options to change, because that's the point of government, right? It is to it's not always one way. It changes as people change and as we evolve and change. So I appreciate the work that the committee did and the ideas that were put forth on how we as citizens can participate more in our government.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Definitely. Yeah. Like I said, I think a lot of people did think that we were in there to take away term limits, and that was never, and I want to just definitely say that on record. That was never anybody's intention on that committee, was to take away term limits. It never was. All we wanted to do was to give people the option. There were people that voted for term limits that said, they voted for them, but they didn't vote for them as strict as they were. And we give those people options.
Very true. So you've recently been appointed Unity Council member for the Arlington Mansfield YMCA. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So what do you hope to accomplish in this role?
Well, for me, definitely, I was previously on the Community Relations Committee, and basically just it kind of switched over to the Unity Council. So I'm honored to be a part of this committee. And for me, I think it's just a way to celebrate the diversity that's in Arlington. Arlington is a very diverse city.
Very much.
And, having this committee, it's a very diverse committee. There's people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, all races, genders and religions. And, I think we can just bring our mind together, brainstorm, and see how we can maybe improve on the diversity in Arlington.
Right.
Yeah, I actually read recently that in the state of Texas, this is a study, so not totally scientific, but we're like the second most diverse city in the state of Texas outside of Houston. And
oh wow!
It's an incredibly diverse city.
Mm-hmm.
But when I read that, I thought like, oh well, yeah, that totally makes sense. Just living here, having lived here my whole life, I see that diversity every day. I know that diversity exists, and I appreciate and celebrate that diversity. I think it's one of the things that I've always loved about Arlington.
Right.
Was it was a place where people could, of all backgrounds, could come together and be part of a city together and move forward together. And I'm glad that the committee's happening and going to help those things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think definitely, with just everything that's going on around the world, I think, it's great to have a committee like this because, and at the end of the day, we're all humans.
Right.
I mean, we might look different. Our skin tones might be different. Our race might be different, but, we're humans at the end of the day, and we're all brothers and sisters. So, it's just a way to celebrate that.
I believe the same thing. I believe also UTA is the most diverse school in Texas. And I don't think the country, but definitely Texas. So.
Yay, go Mavericks. That's my
That's right, Mav up. So switching gears a little bit, we have a segment on the show that we call the Tournament of Toppings, where we're trying to find out the best pizza place in Arlington. What is your favorite pizza place in the city of Arlington?
Oh, pizza. Okay, well, now you're talking.
Yeah.
Downtown Arlington, old school pizza.
All right.
Up to them. That's the best pizza ever.
Yeah. That's the most popular one around.
Yeah.
Almost everybody says that.
Yeah. If it's not the number one for a lot of people, it's definitely up there.
Right.
I'm going to eat there for lunch today.
That's definitely what we're at for lunch.
Hey. The veggie pizza, that's the best. I think it's the Mediterranean or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that Mediterranean's very
Favorite. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if people want to listen to Positively Nikki, if they want to get in touch with you, if they have questions, if they want to help, how can they do so?
Oh, great question. Well, they can find me on Facebook at the Positively Nikki podcast show. I'd love to interview them. I'd love to interview you two as well.
Hey, we'd love to be on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just schedule a time on there, and I'd love to interview anybody that wants an interview. You're more than welcome to be on my show.
Even better. Open call to.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Well, Nikki, I thank you for your time, and we look forward to being on your podcast. We'll return the favor, and
we'll have you back sometime.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
big time.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me. Have a great day and enjoy your pizza.
Oh, we will.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Right. Thank you, man. Bye.
Well, thank you so much to our guests. All this talk about term limits is pretty exciting. Nothing on the ballot yet.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think that there's going to be anything on the ballot. I think that they may push that till next May, whenever we resume regularly scheduled city
our
elections.
regular scheduled programming.
As regularly scheduled as it can be. So, yes, there was a term limits committee, obviously, as you heard about today. But so far, term limits as they were voted in are still enacted. No changes have been made so far. Yep.
So remember to
Make sure to go out and eat local, drink local, and
go rediscover your city.
tag us and send those pictures over to us on Facebook, Arlington Citizen Media, Twitter, ATX Citizen Media. Tag us on Instagram, Arlington Citizen Media, and send those pictures the old-fashioned way. Email arlingtoncitizenmedia@gmail.com. Also go to our website, www.arlingtoncitizenmedia.com. Don't forget to subscribe and give those 5-star reviews of the downtown at Apple Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and also hit us on SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and YouTube.
We ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was waiting on that.
Okay, you saw it coming before I did. All right, go ahead.
All
That's
right.
what the Nugget said.